They laughed at the farm girl in the dealership, but fell silent after her purchase. Emily Johnson took a deep breath before pushing the glass door of the dealership. Her 23 years carried a determination that few could see behind her simple clothes and the straw hat she never abandoned. The worn cloth bag in her hands held more than it seemed, but she knew that no one inside could imagine what was really inside it. The first thing she heard was a loud, disrespectful laugh. Richard Thompson, the dealership manager, pointed at her while talking to other salesmen as if she were some kind of traveling spectacle that had wandered into the wrong place. "Look who's here," said Richard, still laughing. "I think the little girl got lost. The tractor dealership is across the street, dear." The other salesmen started laughing too, creating a chorus of mockery that echoed through the dealership's impeccable showroom. Emily felt her face grow warm, but she kept her head held high. She had prepared for this. She knew it wouldn't be easy. "Good afternoon," she said in a firm voice, addressing Richard directly. "I'd like to see your cars." Richard made a mocking face and looked at his colleagues as if he were facing a ready-made joke. "Cars? You mean those colorful tractors they sell at the fair across town?" His laugh grew even louder. "Because here, young lady, we sell real cars, expensive cars." "I know they're expensive," replied Emily, clutching the bag to her chest. "That's why I'm here." Her response caused even more laughter among the salesmen. One of them, a chubby young man named Bobby, approached while wiping tears from his eyes. "Oh my God, she's hilarious," said Bobby. "Ma'am, do you know how much the cheapest car we have here costs? $40,000. $40,000. That's probably more money than your whole family has ever seen in their life." Emily felt a pang in her chest upon hearing the word family, but she didn't let it show. She had promised her grandmother she would do this, and she wasn't going to give up because of a few rude men. "May I see the cars, please?" she insisted. Richard shook his head, still smiling cruelly. "Look, girl, I'll give you some free advice. Take that little bag of yours and go back to your small town. This is no place for people like you. You'll just end up dirtying our cars with those muddy boots." It was then that Emily looked down and noticed that her boots had indeed left a few marks of dirt on the shiny floor. She felt ashamed for a moment, but then she remembered her grandmother Dorothy's words. "Child, dirt isn't filth. Dirt is where everything that sustains this world is born." "The dirt on my boots feeds people like you," she said, surprising everyone with the firmness in her voice. "And the money in my bag can buy any car you have here." Richard stopped laughing. For a second, something in Emily's tone made him question if she really could have money. But he soon returned to his arrogant behavior. "Money?" he asked, crossing his arms. "What money, dear? Some change you saved up from selling eggs at the fair?" "No," replied Emily, looking directly into his eyes. "The money I got from selling our land." The dealership showroom fell silent for a few seconds. Richard exchanged glances with the other salesman, clearly unsure how to react to this information. "Land?" asked Bobby with a tone of doubt. "What land?" 300 acres of good farmland in the Madison region," replied Emily. "We sold it to an agribusiness company last week." Richard gave a nervous chuckle, but Emily could see he wasn't as confident as before. "Even if that were true," he said, "what would a country bumpkin like you do with a car like this? You probably don't even know how to drive properly." "I've had my license for 5 years," replied Emily calmly. "And I'm not a country bumpkin. I'm a farmer." "There's a difference." On the other side of the showroom, an elegant woman of about 60 was watching the entire scene with growing interest. She had entered the dealership a few minutes after Emily and was waiting to be helped, but the situation had caught her attention. Her name was Catherine Reynolds, and she recognized prejudice when she saw it. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like the video and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out as we're just getting started. Now back to the story. "Look," said Richard, losing his patience, "I'm not going to waste my time with you. If you really have the money, show me. Otherwise, stop interfering with my work." Emily hesitated for a moment. She didn't want to open the bag there, in front of everyone, but she didn't see another choice. Slowly, she untied the cord that closed the cloth bag. "Wait," said a soft voice behind them. Everyone turned to see Catherine approaching. She was an imposing woman, dressed in an elegant pantsuit and carrying an expensive purse. Her presence immediately changed the energy in the room. "Excuse me," said Catherine, addressing Richard. "I couldn't help but notice the way you are treating this young lady." Richard immediately changed his posture, straightening his tie and forcing a professional smile. "Good morning, ma'am," he said, almost bowing. "How can I help you today?" "You can start by treating all of your customers with the same respect," replied Catherine coldly, "regardless of how they are dressed." "You don't understand, ma'am," said Richard, lowering his voice. "This person came in here pretending to have money to buy our cars. We're just being realistic." Catherine looked at Emily and then back at Richard. "And how do you know she doesn't have the money?" "Why, it's obvious." Richard gestured toward Emily. "Look at her. Old clothes, a worn-out hat, dirty boots. She clearly doesn't belong in this environment." "I see," said Catherine in a dangerously calm tone. "So you judge customers' purchasing power by their appearance?" "It's not how you're thinking, ma'am." Bobby tried to intervene. "It's just that we know our clientele, and she clearly is not part of it." Catherine turned to Emily with a gentle smile. "My dear, if you'll allow me to ask, did you really come here to buy a car?" "Yes, ma'am," replied Emily. "I came to buy a car for my grandmother. Well, it was supposed to be for her, but now it's in her memory." Emily's voice caught when she mentioned her grandmother, and Catherine noticed the genuine emotion in her words. "Did your grandmother pass away recently?" asked Catherine delicately. 3 weeks ago," replied Emily, discreetly wiping her eyes. "She always dreamed of having a nice car. She worked her whole life on other people's land, saving every penny. When she passed, she left everything to me on one condition, that I make this dream come true for her." The showroom grew quieter. Even Richard seemed a little uncomfortable with Emily's emotional explanation. Catherine placed a gentle hand on Emily's arm. "What a beautiful tribute you are paying to her. I'm sure she would be proud." "That's what I hope," said Emily, taking a deep breath. "That's why I'm here, even knowing I wouldn't be welcomed." Richard cleared his throat, clearly annoyed at having lost control of the situation. "Look, that's all very touching and everything, but we have a business to run here. If you," he looked at Catherine, "came to buy a car, I would be happy to help you. Now, this young lady is a customer like any other," Catherine interrupted firmly, "and I insist she be treated with respect." "You insist?" Richard raised an eyebrow. "With all due respect, ma'am, but who are you to insist on anything here?" Catherine smiled in a way that made Richard immediately regret asking that question. "My name is Catherine Reynolds," she said calmly. "Perhaps you've heard of the Reynolds Group?" Richard's face instantly turned pale. The Reynolds Group was one of the largest construction companies in New York State, responsible for malls, residential complexes, and commercial buildings throughout the region. "You are," stammered Richard. "I own 12 dealerships, including 3 of this very brand," Catherine added, "and I am very interested in learning how my employees treat potential customers." Bobby swallowed hard and tried to discreetly step back, but Catherine saw him. "You're not going anywhere," she said to Bobby. "Both of you will stay right here and show this young lady every car she wants to see." Richard was sweating now, clearly desperate to fix the situation. "Mrs. Reynolds, It was a misunderstanding. I can explain." "You don't need to explain anything to me," said Catherine. "You need to explain to her." She pointed to Emily. "And you need to show that you know how to treat a customer properly." Emily was watching the whole exchange with a mix of relief and astonishment. She had never imagined someone would stand up for her like that. "Thank you, Mrs. Reynolds," said Emily, "but I don't want to cause trouble for anyone." "You're not causing any trouble, dear," replied Catherine. "The trouble was here long before you arrived." Richard took a deep breath, clearly trying to pull himself together. "Miss, what is your name?" he asked, forcing a smile. "Emily Johnson." "Miss Emily," said Richard, in a tone that tried to sound professional. "I apologize for the initial misunderstanding. If you're interested in our vehicles, I'd be happy to show you our options." "Good," said Catherine. "Now, Emily, tell me what kind of car you were thinking of buying." Emily looked around the showroom, seeing the various models on display. There were elegant sedans, imposing SUVs, and even a few sports cars. "My grandmother always talked about a blue car," she said. "She said blue was the color of the sky and that when she had a blue car, it would be like she could fly." Richard and Bobby exchanged glances, clearly still uncomfortable with the whole situation. "We have a few models in blue," said Richard. "What price range are you considering?" Emily clutched the cloth bag to her chest again. "It depends on the car," she said, "but I have $80,000 here with me." The silence in the showroom was deafening. Richard blinked several times as if unsure he had heard correctly. "$80,000?" asked Bobby in a weak voice. $80,000, confirmed Emily. "In cash." Catherine smiled, clearly pleased with the turn of events. "Well, that changes the picture a bit, doesn't it?" she said to Richard. Richard was visibly shaken. $80,000 was more than many of his customers spent on a car, and he had just treated Emily as if she were a beggar. Of course it does," he said, stammering. "With $80,000 you can choose from several excellent models." "That's good," said Emily. "So can we start looking at the cars?" Richard motioned for her to follow him, but he was clearly nervous. He led her to the first blue car he saw, a mid-size sedan. "This one is an excellent model," he said, patting the hood. "Economical, comfortable, perfect for people coming from the countryside." Catherine rolled her eyes upon hearing Richard's condescending comment. Emily walked around the car, examining it carefully. She ran her hand over the paint and looked inside through the windows. "It's nice," she said. "How much is it?" $65,000, Richard replied quickly. "But for you I can do 60. Catherine stepped closer and looked at the price tag on the car's windshield. "Richard," she said in a warning tone, "the tag here says 52,000. Richard turned red. "Oh yes, well, there are some options included." "What options?" asked Emily. Richard began to sweat even more. "Well, there's the air conditioning and—" "Air conditioning comes standard on this model," interrupted Catherine. "I know this car well." Emily looked at Richard with a disappointed expression. "Are you trying to pull a fast one on me?" she asked. No, it's not that," Richard said desperately. "It was just a mix-up with the numbers." "A very convenient mix-up," Catherine commented dryly. Emily moved away from the first car and began walking through the showroom, looking at other models. She stopped in front of a blue SUV that was in the center of the display. "What about this one?" she asked. Bobby approached, seeing an opportunity to redeem himself. "This is one of our most popular models," he said. "SUV, four-wheel drive, powerful engine. Perfect for someone from a farm who needs a sturdy car." "How much is it?" asked Emily. $75,000, said Bobby. "But it's an excellent investment. It will last a lifetime." Emily nodded and continued examining the car. She opened the hood and looked at the engine, surprising everyone with her action. 2-liter engine, turbo, she said more to herself. 8-speed automatic transmission. Richard and Bobby exchanged glances, surprised by Emily's technical knowledge. "You know about cars?" asked Richard. "A little," replied Emily. "When you grow up on a farm, you learn how to work with machines." Catherine was watching everything with growing interest. There was something about Emily that impressed her beyond the courage to face the salesman's prejudice. "Emily," said Catherine, "may I ask what you do on the farm?" "I manage the property," replied Emily. I managed it. Now that we've sold it, I'm looking for other opportunities." "Managed it?" Catherine seemed surprised. "Do you have a degree in some field?" "Business administration," said Emily. "I graduated last year from the university in Madison." Richard's jaw practically hit the floor. He had assumed Emily could barely read, and now he discovered she had a college education. You went to college?" asked Bobby, incredulous. "I did," Emily replied simply. "Why the surprise?" Catherine chuckled softly. "I think you gentlemen made some wrong assumptions about our friend here," she said to the salesman. Richard was growing increasingly uncomfortable. Each new piece of information about Emily made him realize how wrong he had been about her. "Well," he said, trying to regain some control of the situation, "even with a college degree, $80,000 is a significant investment. Are you sure you want to spend all that on a car?" Emily looked at him with a firm expression. "I'm sure," she said. "And it's not spending. It's investing in the fulfillment of a dream." "A dream of your grandmother's," said Catherine gently. "Exactly," Emily confirmed. "She worked for 50 years of her life for other people. She woke up before the sun rose, worked in the rain and the sun, never took a vacation. And even so, she managed to save money, penny by penny." Emily's voice became emotional again. "She kept the money in a cookie tin under her bed. Every month she would put a little bit in there. When I asked what it was for, she'd say, 'One day I'm going to buy a blue car and drive around just to feel the wind in my hair.'" Catherine felt her eyes well up hearing the story. "And she never got the chance?" she asked. "Never," answered Emily. "She worked until her very last day. And when she passed, I found she had left a note with the money from the can." Emily opened her purse and took out a yellowed piece of paper, folded several times. "May I read it?" asked Catherine. Emily nodded and handed her the paper. Catherine unfolded the note and read it aloud. "My dear granddaughter, if you're reading this, it means I've already gone to be with your grandfather. This money is for you to buy a blue car in my name. I want you to drive it around and feel the wind in your hair for me. With love, Grandma Dorothy." The showroom fell into absolute silence. Even Richard seemed moved by the letter. Catherine handed the paper back to Emily, discreetly wiping away a tear. "What a special woman you had for a grandmother," she said. "She really was," agreed Emily. "That's why I'm here, even though I have to put up with—" She looked at Richard. "Certain unpleasant situations." Richard lowered his head, clearly ashamed. "Miss Johnson," he said, I would like to apologize for my behavior. I acted completely inappropriately." "Yeah," said Emily. "You did." Richard had hoped she would be more receptive to the apology, but Emily wasn't willing to make things easy for him. "What can I do to make it right?" he asked. Emily thought for a moment. "You can show me all the blue cars you have with the real prices without trying to trick me," she said. "Of course," said Richard. "I can do that." He led her to another part of the showroom, where there were a few more blue cars. One in particular caught Emily's eye. It was a luxury sedan with a metallic blue paint job that shone under the ceiling lights. "This one is beautiful," she said, approaching the car. "It's one of our most sophisticated models," said Richard. "Leather interior, premium sound system, GPS navigation." "How much is it?" interrupted Emily. Richard hesitated before answering. $95,000, he said. Emily's face fell. "That's out of my budget," she said. "But—" Richard looked at Catherine, who was observing everything. "Perhaps we can work something out." Catherine stepped closer and looked at the car's price tag. "Richard," she said, "this car is priced at $87,000 according to the tag. Why did you say 95? Richard turned red again. I was including taxes and fees." "What taxes and fees?" asked Catherine. "Taxes are already included in the sale price." Emily shook her head in disappointment. "You just can't stop trying to trick me, can you?" she said. "It's not that," said Richard desperately. "It's just that there are documentation fees, mandatory insurance—" "Which are paid separately and cost at most $2,000, interrupted Catherine. "Emily, this car costs $87,000. If you have $80,000, you're only short $7,000. Emily sighed. $7,000 is a lot of money, she said. "I don't have that extra amount." It was then that Catherine had an idea. "Richard," she said, "how do you intend to compensate for the inappropriate way you treated Emily?" "Well, Richard stammered. "How about a special discount?" suggested Catherine. "Let's say a $7,000 discount." Richard looked like he was about to be sick. $7,000 is a very large discount, Ms. Reynolds. Our profit margin on this car isn't that high." "Then perhaps you should have thought of that before treating a paying customer as if she were a beggar," Catherine replied coldly. Richard looked around, clearly panicked. He knew he couldn't go against Catherine, but he also knew that a $7,000 discount would come out of his own commission. "I can do a discount of $3,000, he said finally. $7,000, repeated Catherine. $5,000, tried Richard. $7,000, Catherine didn't budge. Richard sighed heavily. "All right, a $7,000 discount." Emily looked at Catherine with gratitude. "Thank you," she said, "but I don't want you to do this out of pity for me." "It's not pity," said Catherine. "It's justice. And besides," she smiled, "I'm sure your grandmother would be proud to see you driving this car." Emily smiled for the first time since she had entered the dealership. "She really would be," she said. "So, $80,000 for the car?" "That's right," confirmed Richard, visibly dejected. "Then I accept," said Emily. "Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing." Richard sighed and motioned for them to come to his desk to process the sale. But before they moved, Emily stopped and looked at him. "Just one more thing," she said. "I want you to understand something. I'm no different from any other client who walks in here. The fact that I wear simple clothes and come from a farm doesn't make me any less capable of buying an expensive car." "I understand," said Richard quietly. "No, I don't think you do understand," continued Emily. "You saw my clothes and decided who I was before you even spoke to me. That's prejudice, plain and simple." Richard didn't know what to say. He knew she was right, but admitting it out loud was difficult. Catherine decided to intervene. "Emily is right, Richard," she said, "and I hope this experience teaches you and your team to treat every client with respect, regardless of their appearance." "Yes, ma'am," murmured Richard. They headed to the sales desk, where Richard began preparing the documentation. Emily placed the cloth bag on the desk and started untying it. "May I see the money?" asked Richard. "Of course," said Emily. She opened the bag and began taking out bundles of bills, carefully organized. Each bundle was tied with a rubber band and had a small handwritten piece of paper stuck to it. Richard picked up one of the papers and read, "January 2023, 20,500. "What's this?" he asked. "My grandmother wrote down the month and the amount for every sum she saved," explained Emily. "She was very organized with money." Catherine picked up another paper. "December 2024, $3,000. "She saved money until December of last year?" asked Catherine. "Until the last week of her life," replied Emily. "Even when she was sick, she made a point of setting aside a little of her retirement money to put in the tin." Richard was counting the money and was impressed with the organization. Every bill was clean and well kept, clearly stored with great care. "It's exactly $80,000, he said. "Your grandmother really was very organized." "She was," agreed Emily. "She used to say that those who don't respect money don't deserve to have money." While Richard prepared the papers, Catherine started a conversation with Emily. "Tell me more about yourself," she said. "What do you plan to do now that you've sold the land?" "I'm not entirely sure yet," admitted Emily. "I'm thinking about working for an agribusiness company, or maybe starting my own business." "What kind of business?" "Consulting for small producers," said Emily. "A lot of people in rural areas have good land, but don't know how to make the most of it. I could help." Catherine became interested. "What an interesting idea," she said. "Have you done anything like that before?" "I helped some neighbors when I still lived on the farm," replied Emily. "One of them managed to increase production by 40% just by changing the planting season." "Impressive," said Catherine. "You have a knack for business." Richard finished preparing the documents and presented them to Emily. "I need you to sign here, here, and here," he said, pointing to the fields marked with an X. Emily read each document carefully before signing, impressing Richard once again with her attention to detail. "Would you like to get the vehicle insurance with us?" he asked. "How much is it?" asked Emily. $2,500 a year, replied Richard. Emily thought for a moment. "Is it mandatory?" "It's not mandatory, but it's highly recommended," said Richard. "A car like this is worth a lot of money." "I will get the insurance," decided Emily, "but I'll check prices at other companies first." "As you wish," said Richard. When all the paperwork was signed and the money counted and verified, Richard handed the car keys to Emily. "Congratulations on your purchase," he said, trying to smile. Emily took the keys and held them for a moment, as if she couldn't believe it was really happening. "Thank you," she said, "and thank you too," she looked at Catherine, "for defending me." "It was my pleasure," replied Catherine. May I ask you something? Of course. Would you like to have lunch with me today? Asked Catherine. I have a business proposal that might interest you. Emily was surprised. A proposal? Yes, said Catherine. My company is always looking for talented and determined people, and you clearly have both qualities. I would be honored, said Emily. They arranged to meet at a nearby restaurant in an hour, giving Emily time to get familiar with her new car. Before leaving the dealership, Emily turned to Richard one last time. I hope you learned something from what happened today, she said. I have, replied Richard, and I apologize again for my behavior. I accept your apology, said Emily, but I hope you treat other customers better than you initially treated me. I will, promised Richard. Emily left the dealership driving her new car, with Catherine following behind in her own vehicle. When she started the engine for the first time and felt the smooth purr of the motor, she was sure she could feel the presence of her grandmother Dorothy by her side. At the restaurant, Catherine explained her proposal. She was setting up an agricultural consulting division in her company and needed someone with practical knowledge and academic training to lead the project. It would be challenging work, explained Catherine. You would travel through the countryside visiting producers, analyzing their operations, and proposing improvements. And would I use my car for these trips? Asked Emily. Of course, said Catherine. It would be perfect for the job. Emily smiled. The idea of using her grandmother's car to help other rural producers seemed like the perfect destiny for the vehicle. When can I start? She asked. Next week, if you accept, replied Catherine. I accept, said Emily without hesitation. They spent the rest of the lunch discussing job details and getting to know each other better. Catherine became increasingly impressed with Emily's intelligence and determination. May I make a confession? Said Catherine as they were finishing lunch. Of course. When I saw how those salesmen were treating you, it reminded me of my own youth, said Catherine. I also faced a lot of prejudice when I started my career. People thought a woman couldn't run a construction company. And how did you overcome it? Asked Emily. The same way you did today, replied Catherine. By maintaining my dignity, proving my worth with actions, not words, and never giving up on my goals. Emily nodded. That's what my grandmother taught me too, she said. She always used to say, Honey, let people talk. In the end, the one who's right is the one who gets results. Your grandmother was very wise, said Catherine. She was, agreed Emily. When they left the restaurant, Catherine walked Emily to her car. It's really beautiful, she said, admiring the metallic blue sedan. Your grandmother would be proud. I hope so, said Emily, and thank you for everything you did for me today. I don't know how I can repay you. You can repay me by being successful in your new job, said Catherine, and by treating other people the way you'd like to be treated. You can count on it, promised Emily. They said their goodbyes and arranged to meet the following Monday for Emily to start work. During the drive back to Madison, Emily thought about everything that had happened that day. She had faced prejudice, humiliation, and disrespect, but she had also found an unexpected defender and an incredible job opportunity. More importantly, she had kept the promise she made to her grandmother Dorothy. When she got home, she parked the car in front of the house where she had lived with her grandmother for so many years. The house was empty now, as it was part of the land that had been sold, but she had a few days to collect her personal belongings. She sat in the driver's seat for a few minutes, just feeling the car's interior and imagining how her grandmother would have felt driving that vehicle. I did it, Grandma, she said out loud, even though she knew she was alone. I bought your blue car. The wind rustled the trees in the backyard, and for a moment Emily had the impression that she could feel her grandmother's presence beside her. That night, she packed her bags with the few belongings she wanted to take from the old house. On Monday, a new life, a new career, and a new chapter would begin. But before leaving the house for good, she took the empty cookie tin where her grandmother used to keep the money and placed it on the back seat of the car. It was a memento she wanted to keep close by. On Monday, when Emily arrived at Catherine's office for her first day of work, she drove with confidence and pride. The blue car wasn't just a means of transportation, it was the fulfillment of a dream, proof that determination and hard work always pay off. Catherine greeted her with a warm smile and introduced her to the team. "This is Emily Johnson," she said, "our new agricultural consulting manager." The staff welcomed Emily politely, but she could tell some were surprised by her youth and simple appearance. She decided she would not be intimidated again. "It's a pleasure to meet you all," she said confidently. "I hope to contribute greatly to this company's growth." Over the following months, Emily proved to be an exceptional employee. Her reports were detailed and accurate. Her recommendations always resulted in significant improvements for clients, and she quickly earned the respect of all her colleagues. The blue car became her work tool, taking her to farms and rural properties all over the state. With every trip, she remembered her grandmother Dorothy and how she had overcome prejudice at the dealership. 6 months later, Catherine called Emily into a special meeting. "I have a surprise for you," said Catherine, smiling. "What kind of surprise?" asked Emily. "The agricultural consulting division has been so successful that we've decided to expand it," Catherine explained. "And we want you to be the director of the new division." Emily was speechless for a moment. "Director?" she asked. "That's right," confirmed Catherine. "With your own office, your own team, and full autonomy to run projects as you see fit." I accept," said Emily, moved. "Great," said Catherine. "And there's one more thing. Since you'll need to travel even more to supervise operations in other states, the company will provide an executive car for you." Emily Johnson thought for a moment. "Thank you for the offer," she said, "but I'd like to keep using my own car." "Are you sure?" asked Catherine. "The company car would be newer, with more features." "I'm sure," said Emily. "My car has a sentimental value that can't be replaced." Catherine smiled. "I understand perfectly," she said, "and I admire your loyalty to your roots." That night, Emily drove her blue car to the cemetery where her grandmother Dorothy was buried. She knelt before the headstone and told her about the promotion, about how the car had become an essential part of her professional success. "Your blue car took me to places we never imagined, Grandma," she said, "and it will keep taking me to many more." The wind rustled the flowers she had brought, and once again Emily felt the comforting presence of her grandmother. A year later, Emily's story became famous in the region. She had built a consulting company that helped hundreds of small rural producers increase their productivity and income. The blue car became a familiar sight on the country roads. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like the video and especially to subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. One day, Emily received an unexpected phone call. It was Richard, the dealership manager. "Miss Emily?" he said on the other end of the line. "Yes, it's me," replied Emily, surprised. "What can I do for you, Mr. Richard?" Well, Richard seemed nervous. "I'd like to speak with you if possible." "About what?" "I'd prefer to speak in person, if you don't mind." Emily agreed to meet him at the dealership the following afternoon. When she arrived there driving her blue car, she noticed the atmosphere seemed different. The salespeople were more polite to all customers, regardless of how they were dressed. Richard greeted her with a genuine smile and led her to a private room. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I know I have no right to ask for favors after the way I treated you." "What do you want, Richard?" asked Emily directly. "I want to apologize properly," he said, "and I want to tell you what happened after you left here." "What happened?" "Miss Catherine had a very serious talk with me and the entire team," explained Richard. "She made us understand that the way we treat customers based on appearances is unacceptable." Emily nodded, waiting for him to continue. "Since then, we've implemented new training for all salespeople," said Richard. "We've learned to treat all customers with equal respect, no matter how they present themselves." "That's good," said Emily. "I hope that helps other people from going through what I went through." "It has helped," confirmed Richard. "Our sales have increased because people feel more comfortable here, and our reputation has improved a lot." Richard paused for a moment before continuing. "But the main reason I asked to speak with you is that I want to make a proposal." "What proposal?" asked Emily, suspicious. "I'd like to hire you as a customer service consultant," said Richard, "to train our team and other dealerships on how to treat customers properly." Emily was surprised by the proposal. "You want to hire me to teach you how to treat customers with respect?" "Exactly," said Richard. "You have a unique perspective on what it's like to be treated with prejudice, and you also have the business experience to develop an effective training program." Emily thought about the proposal for a few minutes. "Would this be additional work on top of my current role?" she asked. "Yes, as an external consultant," confirmed Richard. "We pay well, and the work would be flexible to fit your schedule." "Why do you think I should help you?" asked Emily. "After the way you treated me?" Richard took a deep breath before answering. "Because you are a better person than I am," he said honestly, "and because I know you care about making a difference in people's lives." Emily was touched by Richard's sincerity. "I need to think about this," she said. "Of course," said Richard. "Take all the time you need." When Emily left the dealership, she drove to a nearby park to think more about the proposal. On one hand, working with Richard and his team would be a way to ensure that other people wouldn't go through the humiliation she had faced. On the other hand, she wondered if she really wanted to associate with those people. After much reflection, she concluded that accepting the proposal would be a way to turn a negative experience into something positive. She could use her story to educate other salespeople and perhaps prevent customers from being treated with prejudice. The following week, she called Richard and accepted the proposal. "Thank you, Miss Johnson," he said. "When can we start?" "Next Monday," she replied. "But I have a few conditions." "What conditions?" "First, I want complete freedom to develop the training program as I see fit," said Emily. "I agree," said Richard. "Second, I want my story to be used as an example of what not to do." "No problem." "And third, if I see that you are treating customers with prejudice again, I terminate the contract immediately." "Understood," said Richard. "I agree to all the conditions." The training program developed by Emily was a great success. She created practical workshops where the salespeople simulated service situations and learned to identify their own prejudices. Part of the training included a presentation where Emily told her own story, from arriving at the dealership with the cloth bag to the successful purchase of the blue car. "Prejudice doesn't just harm the customer," she explained during the workshops. "It also harms the salesperson, who might lose an important sale because of wrong assumptions." The results were impressive. The dealership where Emily had been humiliated became a reference for respectful service in the region. Other dealerships began hiring Emily to implement the same program. In a short time, she had created a significant second source of income with her customer service consulting work. 2 years after the original incident at the dealership, Emily was invited to give a lecture at an automobile fair in New York City. The theme was "Overcoming Prejudice in Customer Service." She arrived at the event driving the same blue car she had bought with the money from her grandmother Dorothy. The vehicle was impeccable, well-maintained, and had considerable mileage due to her work trips. During the lecture, she told her story to an audience of hundreds of salespeople and dealership managers. The reaction was one of respectful silence when she described how she had been treated, followed by enthusiastic applause when she revealed the end of the story. "Prejudice is a luxury no salesperson can afford," she said to conclude the lecture. "When you judge a customer by their appearance, you might be losing not just a sale, but also the opportunity to meet an extraordinary person." After the lecture, several participants approached to talk with Emily. Many confessed that they had previously treated customers with prejudice and promised to change their attitude. A young salesman approached her with tears in his eyes. "Mrs. Johnson," he said, "I want to apologize." "Why?" she asked, surprised. "Because I have treated customers the same way you were treated," he confessed. "And hearing your story, I realize how much that must have hurt those people." "The important thing is that you recognize the mistake," said Emily, "and that you change your attitude from now on." "I will change," promised the young man. "Your story made me understand that every customer deserves respect." These conversations confirmed for Emily that she had made the right decision to use her experience to educate others. When she left the event, driving back home, She stopped at a gas station to fill up the car. While she waited for the tank to fill, she watched the busy road ahead and thought about everything that had happened since that day at the dealership. The blue car had become much more than a means of transportation. It was a symbol of her determination, proof that she had not given up in the face of prejudice, and the tool that took her to places where she could make a difference in other people's lives. When she got home, she parked the car in the garage of the new house she had bought in Madison. It was a modest but comfortable house, with a garage where the blue car was protected from the elements. Before going inside, she turned to look at the car one more time. "Thank you, Grandma Dorothy," she murmured. "Your dream became so much more than we imagined." At the end of the 3rd year after buying the car, Emily received an invitation to participate in a documentary about overcoming adversity and prejudice. The director had heard her story and wanted to include it in a film about people who had turned negative experiences into strength for social change. "Your story is inspiring," the director said during their initial conversation. "It shows how one person can use an experience of discrimination to educate others and prevent it from happening again." "I'm honored by the invitation," Emily replied, "but I would like the focus to be on the importance of treating all people with respect, not just on my personal story." "Of course," agreed the director. "That's exactly the message we want to convey." The filming took place over several weeks. Emily was interviewed in different locations: at the dealership where it all began, driving on rural roads during her consulting work, and at her home next to the blue car. The most emotional part of the filming was when she visited her grandmother Dorothy's grave, accompanied by the documentary crew. "My grandmother never imagined that her dream of having a blue car would become a tool for social change," she said in front of the camera. "But I am sure she would be proud to know that her story is helping other people." Richard also participated in the documentary, giving a frank interview about how his prejudiced behavior had been transformed by his experience with Emily. "I was a different person that day," he admitted. "I thought I could judge people by their appearance and decide who did or did not deserve my respect. Emily taught me that I was completely wrong." Catherine was also interviewed, explaining how she had decided to stand up for Emily and why it had been important to her. "When I saw how those salesmen were treating Emily, I remembered all the times I had been disrespected for being a woman," she said. "I couldn't stay silent in the face of such injustice." The documentary was released a year later and had a significant national impact. Emily's story inspired many people who had faced similar situations of prejudice. After the film's release, Emily received hundreds of messages from people who identified with her experience. Many shared their own stories of discrimination and thanked her for having the courage to make her experience public. One message in particular moved her deeply. It was from a young Indigenous woman who had been humiliated in an expensive clothing store. "Miss Emily, watching your documentary gave me the strength not to give up on my dreams. Today I have a law degree and work defending the rights of Indigenous peoples. Thank you for showing that we can turn prejudice into fuel for our fight." Messages like this confirmed for Emily that her decision to make her experience public had been the right one. 5 years after buying the blue car, Emily had become a national reference in consulting on respectful customer service. Her agricultural consulting firm continued to grow, and she now had contracts with major retail chains to implement programs to combat prejudice in customer service. The blue car remained her primary work tool, accumulating thousands of miles on the roads of the US. Despite the natural wear and tear of time, Emily made a point of keeping it in perfect condition. "This car isn't just a vehicle," she would explain to mechanics and curious people. "It's a symbol that dreams can come true when we have enough determination." One Friday afternoon, while driving back from a consultation at a farm in rural Pennsylvania, Emily stopped for coffee in a small town. While she was at the diner, an elderly lady approached her table. "Excuse me," said the lady, "is that blue car outside yours?" "Yes, it is," replied Emily. "It's very beautiful," said the lady. "It reminds me of the car my daughter always dreamed of having." "Your daughter couldn't buy a car like that?" asked Emily. The lady sighed. "She passed away last year," she said. "She worked her whole life as a teacher, always saving money to buy a nice car, but when she finally had enough money, she found out she was sick. Emily felt her heart tighten upon hearing the story. "I'm so sorry for your loss," she said. "Thank you, dear," replied the lady. "But you know what makes me the saddest? It's that she never had the courage to go into a dealership because she thought she wouldn't be treated well for being a simple teacher from the countryside." Emily was shocked by the revelation. "She never tried to buy the car?" she asked. "She tried once," said the lady, "but the salesman was so rude to her that she left there crying and never went back." Emily felt tears forming in her eyes. The story of that lady confirmed that her own experience had not been an isolated incident, but part of a pattern of discrimination that affected many people. "What was your daughter's name?" asked Emily. "Shirley," replied the lady. "Shirley Williams." "Mrs.?" Emily realized she didn't know the lady's name. "Gladys," she said. "Gladys Williams." Emily thought for a moment before speaking again. "Mrs. Gladys, would you like to go for a ride in my car?" she asked. "What?" The lady seemed surprised. "I'd like to pay tribute to Shirley," said Emily. "Take you for a ride in the car she always dreamed of having." Mrs. Gladys was moved. "You would do that for a stranger?" she asked. "Of course," replied Emily. "It's what my grandmother would have wanted me to do." They left the diner together, and Emily helped Mrs. Gladys into the passenger seat of the blue car. The elderly woman reverently stroked the leather upholstery. "Shirley would be so happy," she murmured. Emily drove slowly through the streets of the small town, giving Mrs. Gladys time to enjoy the ride. They talked about Shirley, about dreams fulfilled and dreams lost, about the importance of never giving up on your goals. "Did you know your story became a documentary?" asked Mrs. Gladys during the walk. "I did," replied Emily, surprised. "You watched it?" "I did," confirmed Mrs. Gladys. "And I cried a lot thinking about Shirley. If she had met you back then, maybe she would have had the courage to try again." "Mrs. Gladys," said Emily, "can I ask a personal question?" "Of course." "Did Shirley leave the money she had saved for the car?" "She did," replied Mrs. Gladys. "It's kept at home. I'm not quite sure what to do with it." Emily had an idea. "Would you like to fulfill Shirley's dream in a different way?" "How so?" "How about using that money to help other people like her buy their dream cars?" suggested Emily. Mrs. Gladys became thoughtful. "You mean give the money to someone?" "Not exactly give," explained Emily, "but perhaps create a fund that lends money interest-free to people who face discrimination at dealerships so they can buy decent cars." The idea excited Mrs. Gladys. "What a beautiful idea," she exclaimed. "Shirley would be so happy to know her money is helping other people." In the following months, Emily helped Mrs. Gladys create the Shirley Williams Foundation, an initiative that lent money interest-free to people who had faced discrimination when trying to buy cars. The fund worked simply. People shared their experiences of prejudice, and if approved, they received loans they could repay in low installments over several years. As they paid back the money, it returned to the fund to help others. News about the fund spread quickly, and other people began making donations to increase the available amount. Within a few years, hundreds of people had been helped by the program. Emily became the volunteer administrator of the fund, using her consulting experience to evaluate applications and follow up with the recipients. "This project is a natural extension of the work I already do," she explained to journalists. "It's not enough just to educate salespeople about prejudice. We also need to give victims of discrimination the means to overcome it." The blue car remained her work tool, but now it also served to visit fund recipients and follow their stories of overcoming. One of these stories particularly struck Emily. It was the story of Darnell, a 19-year-old black young man who had been humiliated at 3 different dealerships while trying to buy his first car. "They didn't believe I had the money," Darnell told Emily during a visit. "One salesman even called security, thinking I was planning to steal something." With the help of the fund, Darnell managed to buy a good used car. But the most important thing was the psychological impact of the experience. "When I drove my car out of the dealership," he said, "I felt for the first time that I could achieve anything in life." Darnell used this new confidence to enroll in college and now studies engineering, dreaming of starting his own company. Stories like Darnell's confirmed for Emily that the fund project was as important as her consulting work. In the 7th year after buying the blue car, Emily was invited to give a lecture at a university in Washington, D.C. The theme was social entrepreneurship and transforming negative experiences into positive change. It all started with a cloth bag and a dream, she told the students. My grandmother saved money penny by penny for 50 years, but never had the opportunity to fulfill her dream. When I fulfilled that dream for her, I discovered it was much bigger than we had imagined. During the question and answer session, a student raised an interesting point. Mrs. Johnson, how did your experience at the dealership change your view on prejudice? It made me understand that prejudice isn't just an individual problem, she replied. It's a systemic issue that needs to be fought with both education and practical actions. It's not enough to just tell people not to be prejudiced. We need to create mechanisms that allow victims to overcome the barriers that prejudice creates. Another student asked about the role of the blue car in her journey. The car is important not only for its sentimental value, explained Emily. It's important because it represents the materialization of a dream that was almost prevented by prejudice. Every time I drive it, I remember that I shouldn't give up on my goals, no matter how many people try to discourage me. After the lecture, several students approached to speak individually with Emily. Many shared their own experiences of discrimination and asked how they could turn those experiences into strength for change. The first thing is not to let prejudice define who you are, she advised. The second is to use the experience to better understand the difficulties other people face. And the third is to find ways to help those other people overcome the same barriers. During the return trip from Washington, D.C., Emily stopped for dinner in a small town in Kansas. While eating, she watched the street activity through the restaurant window. It was a small town, with simple businesses and people who seemed to have known each other for generations. Emily imagined how many people there had dreams similar to her grandmother Dorothy's, but never had the courage or opportunity to achieve them. This reflection made her think about a new expansion for her work. What if she created a mobile program, bringing education about consumer rights and fighting prejudice to small rural towns? The idea excited her so much that she decided to develop a detailed proposal as soon as she got home. The Blue Road project was launched the following year. Emily and a team of volunteers traveled through rural America in an adapted van, offering free workshops about consumer rights, how to identify and report discrimination, and how to prepare for major purchases. The project's name was a tribute to the blue car and the road Emily constantly traveled for her work. Our goal is to bring information and empowerment to people who live far from major centers, Emily explained during the project's launch. Often, these people face discrimination simply because they don't know their rights as consumers. The project visited a different town each week, offering workshops in the central square, schools, and community centers. The topics included how to prepare for important purchases, basic consumer rights, how to identify discrimination, where to seek help in case of improper treatment, tips for negotiation and financing. The community's response was overwhelmingly positive. Many people shared stories similar to Emily's and teacher Shirley's, confirming that discrimination in customer service was a much broader problem than she initially imagined. In a small town in Louisiana, a 70-year-old woman approached Emily after a workshop. "Dear," she said, "I wanted to tell you something. 20 years ago, I saved money to buy a new refrigerator. When I went to the store, the salesman treated me so poorly that I left without buying anything." "And you never went back?" asked Emily. "Never again," confirmed the woman. "To this day, I use an old refrigerator that barely works because I'm afraid of going through that again." "Do you still have the money?" asked Emily. "I do," said the woman. "It's been saved for 20 years." Emily Johnson accompanied her to the town's appliance store. This time, armed with knowledge about her rights and accompanied by Emily, the woman managed to buy not only a new refrigerator, but also a complete set of appliances for her home. "Thank you, dear," she said to Emily, with tears in her eyes. "You gave me back my courage." Experiences like this became common during the travels of the Blue Road project. Emily realized her work had evolved far beyond the issue of cars. Now, she was helping people overcome the trauma of discrimination in all areas of consumer life. In the 8th year after buying the blue car, Emily received an invitation to participate in a national television program about social entrepreneurship. The program highlighted people who had created innovative solutions to social problems. Emily Johnson turned a personal experience of discrimination into a series of initiatives that have already benefited thousands of people across the United States, the host announced. Her story began with a cloth bag and a blue car, and today it extends across the entire country. During the interview, Emily talked about all the projects she had developed, the consulting work with dealerships, the Shirley Williams Foundation, and the Blue Road Project. What started as my grandmother's dream became a movement for social transformation, she said. I learned that a negative experience can be the start of very positive changes, as long as we have the courage not to let ourselves be defeated by bitterness. The host asked about the role of the blue car in this entire journey. The car is much more than a means of transportation, Emily explained. It is a constant reminder that dreams can come true, even when we face seemingly insurmountable obstacles. Every time I start the engine, I remember my grandmother's words. Dear, let them talk. In the end, the one who is proven right is the one who gets results. After the program, Emily received thousands of messages from people inspired by her story. Many shared their own experiences of discrimination and asked for advice on how to turn those experiences into strength for change. One message struck her deeply. It was from a young single mother who had been humiliated while trying to buy clothes for her son at an expensive store. Emily, watching your program made me realize I don't have to accept disrespect as something normal. Today, I went back to the same store, well prepared and confident, and I managed to buy everything my son needed. The salesman who humiliated me the first time was surprised when he saw I actually had the money to buy. Thank you for teaching me that I can demand respect. Messages like this confirmed for Emily that her work was making a difference in the lives of real people. In the 9th year after buying the car, Emily received an unexpected phone call. It was from Richard, the former dealership manager. Emily, he said on the other end of the line, I need to speak with you urgently. Is something wrong? She asked, worried. Yes, but it's something good, Richard said. Very good. They arranged to meet at the dealership the next day. When Emily arrived there driving the blue car, she noticed there was a new sign at the entrance. Certified Dealership for Respectful Service. Richard greeted her with a radiant smile. Congratulations on the sign, Emily said. What does it mean? It means we are the first dealership in the country to receive official certification for our anti-discrimination programs, Richard explained. And it all started with you. He took her to see the changes implemented at the dealership. There were posters about consumer rights, a special area for inclusive service, and even a dedicated space to share inspiring stories of customers who had overcome prejudice. And there's more, said Richard, clearly excited. We want to create an annual award for dealerships that excel in respectful service, and we want it to bear your grandmother's name. Catherine was moved by the proposal. The Dorothy Johnson Award, she asked. Exactly, confirmed Richard. A tribute to the woman whose dream started this whole transformation. End of story. Dear listeners, we've reached the end of this moving story about Catherine and her fight against prejudice. We hope her journey has touched your hearts as much as it has touched ours. Now we want to know, what did you think of Catherine's attitude? Leave your honest opinions in the comments about how she faced discrimination. Don't forget to like this video and especially subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other inspiring stories like this one.